I'll never forget that day when my simple act of kindness landed me in hot water. It was just another day in math class, or so I thought. I noticed Arya, my shy classmate, struggling to keep up with the lesson again. My heart ached for her, knowing how often she felt lost in class. Without thinking twice, I scribbled a quick note to help her out and passed it discreetly. Little did I know that this small gesture would turn my world upside down. Suddenly, Miss Janet's voice cut through the air like a whip, dripping with anger and contempt. She demanded to know why I was being so disrespectful in her class, asking if I thought it was all just a game. Her words stung like 1,000 bees, each one piercing my heart. I felt the blood drain from my face as I looked up, shocked by the intensity of her reaction. Trying to explain myself, I began to speak, but Miss Janet silenced me immediately. Her sharp green eyes bore into me as she lectured about the classroom being a place for learning, not distractions. I fought back tears, desperately trying to maintain my composure. With a trembling voice, I managed to explain that I was only trying to help Arya, who was struggling with the lesson. But Miss Janet wouldn't hear it. Her words were as cold and hard as stone, echoing through the silent classroom. She ordered me to stand at the front of the class, insisting it would teach me about discipline. I felt utterly humiliated as I slowly made my way to the front, feeling the eyes of every student on me. Some looked afraid, others sympathetic, but all I could focus on was the burning shame in my chest. Tears streamed down my face as I stood there, staring at the floor. I couldn't understand why my desire to help was being punished so severely. Miss Janet's final blow came when she announced to the class that this was a lesson for everyone, that discipline was paramount and rule breakers would be punished. Each word felt like a physical blow, increasing my sense of powerlessness. After class, Miss Janet called me to her office for a private talk. My heart raced as I followed her, dreading what was to come. In her office, she fixed me with a stern gaze and asked if I understood why I was being punished. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back my tears. With a shaky voice, I explained again that I was just trying to help my friend who was struggling and had no one at home to assist her. But Miss Janet's expression remained unmoved. She coldly stated that helping classmates should be done outside the classroom and that my disobedience was unacceptable. I left her office with a heavy heart, the feelings of injustice and humiliation still fresh in my mind. As I walked home, I couldn't help but wonder why my kindness was being punished so harshly. When I finally reached home, I felt a mix of emotions, the lingering pain of humiliation and the comforting familiarity of my safe haven. My mom, Vanessa, with her suntanned skin and work-hardened hands, immediately noticed something was wrong. When she asked what happened, I felt a lump in my throat. I explained how Miss Janet had humiliated me in front of the entire class for trying to help Arya. Mom wrapped me in a warm embrace, trying to comfort me. She told me that sometimes people don't understand our good intentions, but that doesn't make them any less valuable. I felt the warmth of her hug, but the sense of unfairness still burned in my chest. Through my tears, I told her how cruel it felt, that I only wanted to help Arya understand the lesson. Mom sighed, feeling my pain as if it were her own. She suggested that maybe Miss Janet had her own issues, and while it didn't excuse her behavior, it might help me understand. I looked up at Mom with tear-filled eyes, feeling lost and confused. I asked her why this happened to me when I was only trying to do something good. Mom hugged me tighter and told me I was a wonderful person. She encouraged me not to let other people's cruelty take away my kindness, saying the world needed more people like me. Her words gave me a small sense of comfort, but the wound was still fresh. As I helped Mom with chores, later, my mind kept wandering back to Arya. I worried about how she was doing and if she felt guilty about what happened. While washing dishes, I decided I needed to talk to her tomorrow and make sure she knew it wasn't her fault. I felt a new determination growing inside me. Mom watched me silently, sensing the internal struggle I was going through. She encouraged me to stay strong and show Miss Janet that I wouldn't be beaten down. I looked up at her, grateful for her support, and promised to try my best. After lunch, as I helped Mom with more chores, I found myself thinking about my dreams for the future. I imagined becoming a teacher someday, helping kids like Arya overcome their difficulties. I knew firsthand how challenging learning could be, and I wanted to make a difference. This thought filled my heart with a new sense of purpose. I've always been determined and found joy in helping others. I asked Mom if I could go to Arya's house to study together after finishing the chores. She smiled and agreed, knowing how important it was to me. She called me a good friend, gently stroking my face. That afternoon, I went to Arya's house with a backpack full of books and snacks I had prepared. When Arya opened the door, she looked surprised and relieved to see me. With tears in her eyes, she confessed she was afraid I wouldn't want to talk to her anymore after what happened in class. I hugged her tight, feeling her pain. I assured her we were in this together and that we'd study and get through it all. Arya's smile returned, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She thanked me for always cheering her up and being her friend. As we studied together, I realized just how much Arya was struggling with her schoolwork. I gently reassured her, explaining that we'd take it step by step and that I was there for her. Arya began to gain confidence, believing she could do it with my help. On my way home that evening, I felt a sense of satisfaction. It had been a good day, Arya was doing better, and I had been able to help her. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but I felt ready to face them. I was determined to keep going, for my sake and for Arya's. That night, as I got ready for bed, the day's harsh treatment still lingered in my mind. I felt a knot of anxiety in my chest, wondering how I'd face everyone in class tomorrow and if Miss Janet would treat me badly again. But I quickly steeled myself, knowing I couldn't give up because Arya needed me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself before sleep. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I found myself wishing Miss Janet could understand how difficult things were for Arya and how much she needed support. My heart was a mix of sadness and hope as I drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring.
Meanwhile, Arya lay on her bed, reflecting on what had happened in class. Janet's words echoed in her mind, filling her with an overwhelming sense of guilt. Why did Madison have to go through this, she thought, her heart aching. She felt responsible for her friend receiving such harsh words and reprimands from the teacher. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she remembered the incident. Madison is such a wonderful friend, Arya thought, emotions welling up inside her. She's the only friend who knows my secret, she continued, feeling even more guilty. She recalled how Madison was always there for her, supporting and understanding her. Madison is the only one who knows what situation I'm in. She tried to help me, and got scolded so unfairly. This shouldn't have happened. It's all my fault, Arya thought, wiping her tears with a heavy heart. The situation felt unfair, and she wished she could change everything. If only there was something I could do, she pondered, her heart filled with sadness. It felt like everything had gone wrong, even though Madison had tried to help her. Madison deserves better. She's such a good person, Arya thought, feeling a mix of sadness and respect for her friend. Arya continued to be lost in thought. How can I thank Madison for everything she's done for me? Arya wondered, wanting to find a way to express her gratitude despite her feelings of guilt. Arya knew well that Madison never blamed her and always supported her unconditionally. I'm lucky to have a friend like her, Arya thought, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst her sadness. Meanwhile, that night, Janet sat alone in her house. The simple but well-maintained home was silent except for the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Janet looked around, gazing at the old furniture and family photos. "This house feels so empty ever since Nicholas passed away and the kids left." Janet felt a tightness in her chest. The loss of her husband and the distance from her children had left her with a great sense of emptiness, which she tried to fill with work. Janet sighed, feeling the weight of loneliness. "I always thought that being strict and maintaining discipline was the only way to keep order," she reflected on her career as a teacher. From the beginning, she faced rebellion from many students and felt she had to be strong. "I had to be strong to maintain control." Janet remembered the long nights she spent grading tests and planning lessons. Her strictness was not just a choice, but also a way to cope with her own lack of empathy. Janet had grown up wanting for nothing materially, but strict discipline was strongly imposed at home. This shaped her ideas about how a teacher should be. Janet felt that whenever she heard someone talk about difficulties, it was a sign of weakness. "People need to be strong like me," she thought, justifying her coldness. As she gazed at her husband's photo, Janet was overcome with nostalgia. "Nicholas always said I should be kinder and more understanding," she remembered, feeling a pang of regret. However, for Janet, kindness was often seen as weakness, and she couldn't afford to accept it. "I couldn't afford to be weak," she concluded, reaffirming the need for discipline. Nicholas didn't understand that, she thought, believing her strictness was justified. Janet picked up an old album and began turning the pages. "My children also suffered from my strictness," she thought as she looked at photos of her growing children. "Will they understand why I was so strict?" she wondered, feeling a lump in her throat. Janet believed she had done her best to prepare her children for the world. "They never thanked me," she thought, feeling a bit bitter. As the night wore on, Janet prepared a cup of tea and sat on the sofa. She thought back to the children she teaches. "Many students don't seem to understand the discipline I was taught." Janet recalled the incident in the classroom and wondered if Madison understood how much she was trying to help. "Does she realize how much I'm trying to help her?" Janet remembered the incident in the classroom and her harsh words, which made her uncomfortable. "She only sees my strict side," she thought, still justifying her attitude. Janet thought about her career as a teacher. "I've dedicated years to teaching, but have I been teaching the right way?" Janet felt doubts rising. Remembering sleepless nights and the many challenges she had overcome, she now questioned whether her strict methods were really the best. "Have I done more harm than good to my students, even though I meant well?" Janet felt her confidence being eroded by anxiety. She closed the photo album and got up to walk to the window. The night sky was clear, and moonlight illuminated the quiet street. "I need to find a way to empathize more with my students and understand them," Janet questioned, feeling a desire to change. "But can I change something so deeply rooted?" she thought. Understanding it wouldn't be easy. Before going to bed, Janet looked at Nicholas's photo on her nightstand. "What would you say if you were here?" she asked aloud, searching for answers in her memories. Janet closed her eyes, hoping the new day would bring answers. The next day, unable to shake off the previous day's events in class, Janet sat alone in a quiet room, contemplating her actions. Madison needed a lesson, Janet thought, justifying her actions. Discipline had always been the pillar of her beliefs, and she firmly believed that without it, students couldn't grow. "There's a reason for rules," she whispered to herself, reaffirming the importance of punishment. Janet remembered her own strict childhood. She recalled being treated harshly and misunderstood many times. "My father was very strict and never patient with our failures," Janet remembered crying alone at night. Father always said that discipline forms character. She felt her actions were justified and continued to think. He was right. "I became a strong and resilient person." Janet became more convinced that punishing Madison was right as she organized her papers. She was just trying to help her friend. "But she needs to understand that there's a time and place for everything," Janet thought confidently. The classroom is not a place for distractions. Discipline is always the most important thing.
I'll never forget that morning when I left that note on Miss Janet's desk. My heart was pounding like a drum as I carefully folded the paper, my hands trembling like leaves in the wind. I knew I was taking a big risk, but I couldn't stand by and watch Arya suffer any longer. The words I wrote felt like they were etched in fire. Miss Janet, I want you to know the truth about yesterday's incident. I explained how Arya often came to school without breakfast because there was no food at home. My chest tightened as I wrote about sharing my lunch with her every day and helping her with homework, trying to lift her spirits. It was like I was pouring my soul onto that paper, revealing Arya's difficult home life, living in a small house in the suburbs with her mom and 2 younger brothers, abandoned by their father. I felt a lump in my throat as I described Arya's shy nature, how skipping breakfast affected her grades, and her struggles to understand the lessons. I'm the only one who knows what she's going through, I wrote, feeling the weight of that responsibility. As I placed the note on Miss Janet's desk that morning, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, not knowing if I'd fall or fly. The wait for Miss Janet to read it was excruciating, like watching molasses drip on a cold day. When she finally entered the classroom and saw the note, my heart leaped into my throat. I watched her face intently as she read, trying to gauge her reaction. Her expression changed from curiosity to shock, and then to what looked like deep regret. It was as if I could see the realization dawning on her face, like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Suddenly, she looked up and her eyes met Arya's. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I saw Miss Janet's face flush red, probably realizing how insensitive she had been. When she turned to look at me, I saw a mix of admiration and sadness in her eyes. It was like she was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. The silence in the classroom was deafening as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Finally, Miss Janet spoke, her voice shaky. Madison, Arya, please stay after class. I'd like to speak with you both privately. Arya and I exchanged glances, both worried about what was to come. I reached out and squeezed Arya's hand, trying to give her courage. All I could think was, I hope Miss Janet understands and things get better from here. Throughout the class, I could tell Miss Janet was distracted. Her mind seemed to be a million miles away, probably still processing what I had written. Time seemed to crawl by, each minute feeling like an hour. When the bell finally rang, my stomach was in knots. Miss Janet took a deep breath and called us over. As we walked to her desk, the air felt heavy with anticipation. Madison, I read your letter, she began, her voice thick with emotion. I want to apologize to both of you. I didn't understand your situation. I was insensitive and unfair. She looked directly at Arya, her eyes full of remorse. Arya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea how much you were struggling. From now on, I'll do everything I can to help you. Arya's face was a mix of surprise and relief. She thanked Miss Janet in a voice barely above a whisper. As I stood there, watching this unfold, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a positive change for all of us.
After a long day at school, Janet returned home, her mind still consumed by Madison's letter. She sank into her living room chair, cradling her head in her hands. Regret welled up in her chest as Madison's words revealed painful truths she had ignored. I should have noticed, Janet thought, feeling small and ashamed. The silence of her house seemed to amplify her guilt. Arya has been enduring so much, and I treated her so harshly. Janet felt tears welling up. She had always believed discipline was the key to success, but now she realized how much empathy she had lacked. I must make this right, she decided, standing up. I have to do something. Janet tried to organize her thoughts as she paced around the house. Nicholas always said I should be more understanding. Maybe he was right, she reflected, remembering her late husband. Nicholas had always tried to show her a gentler path, but Janet had been trapped in her own beliefs. Now I see how wrong I was, she thought, feeling like she had lost her humanity. Janet went to the kitchen and brewed a cup of tea to calm herself. I can't change the past, but I can do something now, Janet resolved, feeling a glimmer of hope. She knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to improve the situation. I need to take concrete action, she thought, taking a sip of tea. I need to do something that will really impact these children's lives, Janet began to plan as she looked out the window. Maybe a lunch program could help students like Arya, Janet felt her ideas expanding. If they have guaranteed meals, they'll be able to focus on their studies, she thought, feeling energized by the possibility of doing good. I'll propose this to the school administration tomorrow, she decided, but her heart felt urgent. But Arya needs help right now. I can't wait, Janet hurried to her pantry. She began gathering some groceries. This should help Arya and her family get through today, Janet thought, packing rice, potatoes, bread, canned vegetables, and some sweets into a bag. I hope this helps, even a little, Janet felt some relief as she saw the full bag. I'll give this to her tomorrow, she decided, ready to take swift action. The next day, Janet arrived at school with new determination. She went straight to the administration office to speak with Gregory, the school principal. I have an important proposal, Janet said, trying to keep her voice steady. Intrigued, the principal invited her in. Janet began explaining her proposal passionately. I want to create a lunch program for struggling students. Many children come to school hungry, and it's affecting their academic performance, she spoke, feeling the urgency in her words. Gregory saw the seriousness in Janet's eyes and listened intently. Janet, this is really necessary, the principal responded, beginning to feel the same enthusiasm. How do you plan to make this happen? He asked, showing interest in the details. Janet took a deep breath and continued. I'd like to involve teachers, parents, and the community in fundraising by running a simple cafeteria, each word underscored her strong determination. The principal nodded thoughtfully. I'll talk to the teachers about this. I think everyone will want to help, he said, showing his support. Janet felt gratitude and relief welling up. Thank you, Gregory. This means so much to me and the children, Janet replied with more confidence than before. Afterwards, Janet headed to her classroom, feeling a new energy and sense of purpose.
As I entered the classroom that day, my heart was still pounding from the conversation with Miss Janet. I saw Arya sitting at her desk, her posture tense like a coiled spring. Miss Janet approached her with a warm smile that seemed to light up the room. My breath caught in my throat as I watched, hardly daring to hope. Then, to my amazement, Miss Janet told Arya she had brought her a present. I couldn't believe my eyes when she handed Arya a bag full of groceries. It was like watching a miracle unfold right before me. Arya's face transformed from tension to surprise and joy, her eyes wide as saucers. She thanked Miss Janet, her voice thick with emotion, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. I felt a wave of relief and happiness wash over me, as powerful as a summer storm. I couldn't help but exclaim how much this would help, my voice trembling with joy. Miss Janet's actions touched me deeply, like a warm embrace on a cold day. I watched in awe as she gently kissed both Arya and me on the forehead. It was such a tender gesture, full of love and support, reminding me of my own mother. When Miss Janet looked into Arya's eyes and assured her everything would be all right, I felt a surge of hope. It was as if the sun had finally broken through the dark clouds that had been hanging over us. In that moment, I realized that sometimes, a small act of kindness can change everything. I felt a renewed determination to keep helping others, no matter what obstacles I might face. This experience taught me that compassion and understanding can bridge any gap, heal any wound. As I sat there, overwhelmed with emotion, I knew this day would stay with me forever.
With the principal's approval and support from other teachers, Janet began mobilizing the community for the new lunch program. She organized meetings with parents, seeking donations of basic food items, fruits, and vegetables. "We are going to change these children's lives," Janet declared at one meeting, feeling a stronger resolve than ever before. Parents and teachers responded favorably, and cooperation began to take shape. Janet felt a wave of gratitude and relief wash over her. "Thank you all. Together, we can make a real difference in these children's lives," she said, feeling a surge of new energy. As the lunch program began to take form, Janet noticed changes within herself as well. "Finally, I'm doing something truly important," Janet thought as she watched the cafeteria preparations progress. Arya and the other children will now be able to focus on their studies without the burden of hunger. Janet felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This is just the beginning, she resolved, steeling herself for further changes to come.
I'll never forget the first day of the new lunch program. My heart swelled with pride and joy as I watched the kids line up to receive their meals. It was like witnessing a miracle unfold before my eyes, a dream I never thought possible coming true. Ms. Janet stood there, beaming like a proud mother hen watching over her chicks. She turned to Arya and me, her eyes twinkling with warmth, and told us that this was all for us. Those words hit me like a tidal wave of emotion, making me realize just how much she cared. Arya looked at Ms. Janet with such gratitude, it was as if she was seeing an angel. Her voice trembled with emotion as she thanked Ms. Janet, holding her plate as if it were made of gold. I stood next to Arya, feeling a mix of embarrassment and overwhelming gratitude. I had a hard time finding the right words to express my feelings. Finally, I managed to tell Ms. Janet that she was doing something truly wonderful. My voice was thick with respect and admiration, barely able to convey the depth of my appreciation. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of hope for the future, like a warm ray of sunshine breaking through dark clouds. I realized that one person's kindness and determination could spark a change that would ripple through many lives. This experience taught me a valuable lesson about the power of compassion and perseverance. It made me more determined than ever to follow in Ms. Janet's footsteps and make a difference in the world. As I looked around at my classmates' smiling faces, I knew that this was just the beginning of something beautiful. The memory of that day will stay with me forever, a testament to the fact that with love and dedication, we can overcome any obstacle.
Janet felt deeply moved as she watched the children eating their meals. "I've done what was necessary," she thought, observing the happy faces of her students. "This is the true reward," she reflected, finally feeling a sense of peace in her heart. The lunch program wasn't the only thing that had changed. Janet herself had begun to transform from within. "Empathy can change the world," she mused, resolving to become a more sensitive and compassionate teacher, more attuned to her students' needs. The students became more united, organizing events and campaigns to help their struggling peers, and the school atmosphere grew warmer and more caring. During recess, students gathered in the schoolyard to discuss how they could help their friends in need. They realized that small actions could make a big difference in others' lives. One student suggested holding a bazaar to sell handmade items and raise funds for school supplies and food. The idea was enthusiastically received, and students immediately began brainstorming ways they could contribute. Some students decided to bring their own paintings or crafts. Others volunteered to make handmade accessories like bracelets and necklaces. A spirit of cooperation spread throughout the school, with the enthusiasm evident to everyone. The bazaar was scheduled for the following week, and all the students began investing time and effort into making it a success. As preparations progressed, Janet watched with a smile on her face. She felt a deep sense of pride witnessing the positive changes taking place in the school. "They've really understood the message," Janet thought, touched by the impact of her actions. The growing spirit of unity and support was transforming the school environment. Janet could feel the school becoming an increasingly warm and empathetic place. She was confident they were on the right path to creating a place where everyone felt valued and supported. On the day of the bazaar, the school was buzzing with excitement. Colorful stalls decorated the schoolyard, with students happily working together to arrange and sell their goods. Parents, teachers, and students turned out in large numbers to support the initiative. Parents were buying items and praising the young people's efforts. One mother proudly remarked how wonderful it was to see the children united for such a noble cause. The atmosphere was filled with joy and cooperation, with everyone feeling they were contributing to something special. Janet walked among the stalls, chatting with students and visitors. "I'm so proud of all of you," she said, watching the children working together.
I'll never forget that day of the bazaar, how Arya and I threw ourselves into helping organize the event. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly valued and understood, like I was part of something bigger than myself. It was as if a warm blanket of unity had been draped over our entire school, transforming it into a haven of kindness and compassion. As the day drew to a close, the excitement in the air was palpable. We'd achieved more than any of us had dared to hope. The bazaar was an overwhelming success, with profits soaring beyond our wildest dreams. We all gathered to celebrate, our hearts swelling with pride and joy. The power of our unity and solidarity washed over us like a tidal wave of happiness. I overheard one of my classmates saying how we could help so many families now, his voice thick with satisfaction. In that moment, I felt a lump form in my throat, realizing the true impact of what we'd accomplished. Arya and I, overcome with gratitude and elation, hugged each other tightly. It was like all the struggles we'd faced had led us to this beautiful moment of triumph. As I held Arya, I was struck by a profound realization that left me breathless. I never imagined that our small act of kindness could snowball into something so monumental. It was as if we'd planted a tiny seed of hope, and it had blossomed into a magnificent tree of change. Looking around at the beaming faces of my classmates, I felt a sense of belonging I'd never experienced before. We were more than just students now, we were a force for good, capable of making real change in our community. This experience taught me that no gesture of kindness is ever too small, and that together, we can move mountains. I knew then that this day would stay with me forever, a testament to the power of compassion and unity. After the bazaar, I sat there, amazed at what we'd accomplished. The impact of our efforts was far greater than I'd ever imagined. Seeing everyone united like that filled my heart with joy.
Meanwhile, Arya felt relieved and filled with happiness. She looked around, thinking to herself, "Finally, I feel like we're making a difference." The unity and mutual support gave both of them the confidence that they could overcome any difficulty. The school, transformed by the student solidarity, became an example of how kindness and empathy can create a warm and positive environment. Janet thought to herself, "This is the power of unity." She was grateful to be part of this change. She concluded, "With everyone's help, we can make the world a better place." She was determined to continue taking action to strengthen the school community. One day, the principal decided to host a gathering to celebrate the success of the lunch program. The cafeteria was bustling with children eating and chatting. Watching the scene, Janet felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She thought, "Every child here deserves the very best." Janet smiled at Arya and Madison as they ate their meals. She concluded, "This is the true purpose of education." Janet was determined to continue this transformation and positive impact. The school was decorated with colorful balloons and ribbons, with students, teachers, and parents gathered to celebrate the success of the lunch program. Janet felt a mix of nervousness and pride as she prepared to speak. "This is an important day," she thought, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. "I need to convey what's in my heart." The ceremony began, with the principal speaking first, praising the efforts of everyone involved. "This program wouldn't have been possible without the dedication of our school community," Gregory said, and everyone applauded. Then, he invited Janet to the stage. "Now, I'd like to ask Ms. Janet to say a few words," he announced. Janet took the stage, feeling all eyes on her. "Hello, everyone," she began with a slightly shaky voice. "Today, I want to share how this all started." She looked at Madison and Arya in the crowd. "One day, I reprimanded Madison in class," Janet continued. "I said some harsh words, not knowing what she was really going through." Janet paused, feeling her emotions rise. "The next day, I received a letter informing me about the difficulties Arya was facing," she said with a sense of regret. "That's when I realized I had been wrong, too harsh, and I deeply regret that."
Miss Janet looked straight at me and Arya, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and determination. She told everyone that she'd already apologized to us privately, but wanted to do it publicly too. I could see her take a deep breath, steadying herself. Her words hit me like a tidal wave. "I'm sorry, both of you. That day, I was too harsh and disrespectful." The sincerity in her voice made my heart ache a little. Then she said something that really touched me. She was grateful for what happened because it allowed her to help other kids, especially Arya. The whole place went quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was taking in Miss Janet's words, and I felt the weight of the moment. Then, to my surprise, she started talking about me. She called me kind, said I was a role model for her and the whole school. I felt my cheeks burning, a mix of embarrassment and pride washing over me. After the ceremony, Miss Janet pulled me aside for a private chat. Her eyes were brimming with gratitude as she looked at me. She told me how thankful she was, saying my kindness had changed not just her life, but many others too. I felt a lump in my throat, overwhelmed by her words. I managed to smile, feeling truly appreciated for maybe the first time in my life. I thanked her, telling her how glad I was that something good came out of all this. I felt a deep connection with her, like we'd been through a war together and come out stronger. I added that I could see how hard she was trying to make things better for all of us. Miss Janet's eyes welled up, and a tear rolled down her cheek. She told me I'd taught her so much, and she was so grateful. Then she hugged me, and in that moment, I felt understood and respected in a way I never had before. She suggested we keep working together to help more kids, and I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. I agreed, feeling a surge of hope and purpose. We shared a moment of deep understanding and respect, showing that real change is possible through empathy and cooperation. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment everything truly began to change.
After finishing her conversation with Madison, Janet walked over to Arya, who was smiling a little ways off. "Arya, can we talk for a moment?" she gently asked. Arya nodded and walked towards Janet, feeling a bit nervous. Janet placed her hand on Arya's shoulder and looked directly into her eyes. She spoke with determination and affection, promising to support Arya with all her might to ensure she never faces difficulties again while she's here. Janet affirmed that Arya deserves a better life and that she'll do her best to make that happen. Arya's eyes sparkled as she looked at her teacher, deeply moved by Janet's words. She thanked Janet, feeling more secure and hopeful than ever before. Janet's words brought healing to Arya's heart, and a new confidence began to grow within her. Janet smiled, feeling her bond with Arya deepen even further. She told Arya that she was truly special and that they intended to give her all the support and love possible. Arya smiled back gratefully, thanking Janet for believing in her. The celebration was filled with laughter and chatter, with everyone enjoying time together. Janet watched over the scene, feeling proud of what they had accomplished. She thought to herself how small acts of kindness can make a big difference. Arya and Madison looked happy, surrounded by friends. They were confident that with everyone's support, they could continue to improve the lives of children at school. As the gathering progressed, Janet felt a lightness and happiness she hadn't experienced in a long time. She thought to herself that this was a new beginning as she watched the children play and parents chat happily. Janet concluded that this was the true purpose of education and was determined to continue on this path of transformation and positive impact. After the gathering, Janet gathered parents and teachers to discuss the future development of the lunch program. She spoke with enthusiasm, encouraging everyone to help the program grow and assist more children. She added that they could surely achieve it if they all worked together, feeling the community's support. Parents and teachers agreed, promising to continue contributing to the program. With community support, the lunch program expanded further, helping even more children. Janet felt a deep sense of achievement as she witnessed the positive impact of her actions. She thought to herself that they were truly making a difference as she watched the children eat energetically and study more enthusiastically. As the gathering was ending and most participants had left, a woman approached Janet. Janet immediately noticed the expression of gratitude on the woman's face. The woman introduced herself as Heather, Arya's mother, explaining that she couldn't attend the beginning of the gathering but really wanted to meet Janet. Janet felt emotions welling up as she heard Heather's words. She extended her hand, saying she was glad to meet her and that her daughter was truly special. Heather's eyes shone with gratitude as she firmly grasped Janet's hand. She began to speak, holding back her emotions, expressing her heartfelt thanks for everything Janet had done. Janet felt a lump in her throat as she listened to Heather's words. Heather continued to talk about the difficult situation her family had faced. She explained that Arya's father had left some time ago, and she had been supporting the family by working as a housekeeper. Janet felt deep empathy for Heather and truly respected her strength and determination. She sincerely expressed her admiration for Heather's courage in facing so many difficulties while still maintaining hope. Heather nodded, tears finally falling from her eyes. Janet, moved, gently approached Heather and warmly embraced her. She spoke with a tear-filled voice, saying that she was the one who should be grateful. Heather felt comforted and understood in the embrace. She repeated her thanks, feeling the weight on her shoulders lighten a little. As the embrace ended, Janet looked at Heather with a determined expression. She smiled encouragingly, saying they would continue to provide as much support as possible. Heather smiled back, feeling more hopeful than ever. She responded with new confidence that together, they could overcome anything. Janet watched Heather leave, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction in her heart. She thought to herself that this was the true reward, grateful for being able to bring change to someone's life. Although she knew it was just the beginning, Janet was determined to continue on this path. She thought with more motivation than ever that even the smallest act of kindness was important. The schoolyard gradually grew quiet, but a sense of unity and purpose remained in the air. Janet was inspired by her conversation with Heather. She thought to herself how incredible it was that small actions could have such a big impact as she helped clean up the tents and organize the schoolyard. She considered strengthening the community further with a new sense of determination. As she put away the last of the equipment, Janet reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She thought it had been a difficult road, but every step had been worthwhile. Janet concluded with a smile that the future now looked brighter. She was confident that with community support, they could continue to create a warm and supportive environment. As the sun began to set, Janet looked over the schoolyard, tired but happy, feeling a sense of fulfillment in her heart. She thought it had been a wonderful day, feeling a mix of physical fatigue and joy in her heart. She reflected that now, many children like Arya had a chance at a better life. She concluded that this was just the beginning, strengthening her resolve to continue bringing change. Arya and Madison continued to support each other and feel loved in their school life. One day, At the end of class, Arya thanked Janet. Janet smiled and replied that no thanks were necessary, that seeing them happy and healthy was the greatest reward for her. And so, Janet's change continued to influence not only her own life but the lives of many others. She grew into a more empathetic teacher, responsive to her students' needs, and determined to make a difference. Janet watched over her students, thinking with pride and hope that together, they could create a better future. 5 years passed, and one day, Janet walked down the school hallway, proudly observing the results of their transformation.
I was 17, and Arya and I were about to graduate high school. Looking back, I'd always excelled academically, pushing myself to reach my goals. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The support I'd received here had changed everything. My mind wandered to all the opportunities and encouragement I'd gotten from school and our community. I made a silent vow to cherish these lessons for the rest of my days. A wave of gratitude washed over me as I thought of everyone who'd helped me along the way. My heart swelled with appreciation, and I couldn't help but think, I never would have made it this far without everyone's support. Arya had been through the ringer too, but she'd come out stronger on the other side. I could see the determination in her eyes, inspired by our friendship and shared struggles. She once told me how different her life was now compared to those tough times in the past. I caught her looking at me with admiration, and it touched my heart. Arya confided that she never imagined achieving so much. I knew she still had moments when she'd remember those anxiety-filled nights. But now, with Janet and me by her side, Arya was ready to face any challenge head-on.
Janet watched the two young women with deep pride. They proved how empathy and solidarity can transform lives. Her heart warmed at her students' achievements. Arya, Janet thought, was the greatest reward she could have as a teacher. All the effort and initiatives had been worthwhile. She recalled when the school lunch program was just an idea. Now it had grown to touch many lives. Janet saw the difference in her students, brighter, more focused, and hopeful. It wasn't just about meals now, but building community. She reflected on her early teaching days, struggling to make ends meet. Now she was watching these girls ready to face the world. Madison and Arya had changed dramatically since she first met them. Janet felt emotional thinking how far they'd all come together. She knew this was just the beginning for the girls. Their futures were bright and full of possibilities. Janet vowed to keep fighting for every child, as she had for Madison and Arya. She now knew one person could truly make a difference. Watching the girls talk, Janet felt renewed purpose. This was why she became a teacher, to change lives, one student at a time.
As I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, the applause that filled the hall was like a wave of emotion washing over me. I couldn't help but glance at Ms. Janet, and I saw tears of pride streaming down her face. In that moment, it hit me, I'd really done it. All those late nights studying, all those times I'd wanted to give up but pushed through anyway, they'd all led to this. Ms. Janet had always said I was a symbol of perseverance and courage, but standing there, diploma in hand, I finally believed it. It was a pure moment of celebration and recognition, and I savored every second of it. I watched as Arya, my partner in this journey, received her own accolades. I could see the pride radiating from her as she took the stage. I remembered all those times she'd confided in me, saying she never thought she'd make it this far. Now here she was, proving herself wrong in the best way possible. The applause and smiles around us told the story of just how far we'd both come. After the ceremony, Ms. Janet approached us, and I could see she was overcome with emotion. She told us that we were the reason she did this job, that seeing us grow and succeed was her greatest reward. When she hugged us, I felt years of support and love in that embrace. I looked into Ms. Janet's eyes, trying to hold back my own tears. I thanked her for never giving up on us, telling her that she'd shown us that with support and determination, anything was possible. I wanted her to know that I was determined to keep making a difference, just like she had. Ms. Janet's response touched me deeply. She said she'd learned so much from us too, and I could see how proud she was to have been part of our journey. Aria, always more eloquent than me, told Ms. Janet that she changed our lives forever. She said we'd never forget what Ms. Janet had done for us, that she'd given us hope and a future. I nodded in agreement, feeling the strength to keep moving forward. As I stood there, diploma in hand, with Aria and Ms. Janet by my side, I realized that this wasn't just my achievement, it was ours. We'd lifted each other up, pushed each other forward, and now we were standing at the threshold of our futures, ready to take on whatever came next. I thought about all the other kids out there who might be struggling like we once did, and I made a silent promise to myself. I would use everything I'd learned, all the strength and compassion I'd gained, to help others the way Ms. Janet had helped us. Because now I knew, without a doubt, that one person really could make all the difference in the world.
As the sun set on this unforgettable day, Janet reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. She concluded that watching her students grow and succeed was the greatest joy in her life. With renewed determination, she resolved to continue making a difference. The story of Madison, Aria, and Janet stood as a testament to the power of kindness, friendship, and unity. Madison's small act of kindness in helping Aria had not only changed Aria's life but had sparked a transformation throughout the entire school. It had touched countless lives and created a stronger, more compassionate community. If you enjoyed this story, we'd be mighty appreciative if you'd click that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support is what keeps us going, folks, allowing us to bring you these heartwarming tales on a regular basis. Don't forget to tune in for our next wonderful story. We're truly grateful for your support, each and every one of you. Until next time, take care now.